I remember thinking we might not get it. There was a video of you doing like stand-up on YouTube, and I for a second considered like pulling just some of that footage. But I was like, it's just like an old camera in the back of the room kind of thing. Like, we can shoot it better than that. And so, yeah, it was in my head that he did stand-up, but it wasn't until 2020 that we booked that club, and it was actually like a month before COVID. It was like we just got over the wire. So it was like February 2020, and that was one of the last things that we did. So I was always hoping that the stand-up would make it in. But in its original 7-minute concept, I didn't see a whole lot of room for it. It wasn't until I was like, okay, you know what, this film isn't 7 minutes. It should be longer than that. That's when I was like, okay, let's put the stand-up in. And let's get everything. Let's get the waxing. Like all the weird shit you do, I'm like, let's get it. Let's put it in. It's awesome.
So we'll so when it comes down to I'm an eccentric asshole.
I was gonna say I'll get to the waxing later, but you're quite gifted stand-up, John. Who were some of your influences? Because obviously, like when I met you, you were cracking the jokes the other day. But yeah.
I think George Carlin was one of my favorites, just because the way that he manipulates the English language. Adam Sandler. I don't know, the new ones that everybody's crazy about. I mean, I listen to Bill Burr and say, yeah, he's funny, but do I want to sit there for 15, 20 minutes getting entertained? I don't know, I guess I'm just so comedied out, kind of like the documentary, that, you just do, it's just like, almost like a performance. You come on and you say, okay, how many minutes do I have? Okay, like, just let me loose and I'm just going to do so. Again, you appreciate talent, but you also, remember, some of these guys working with you in rooms and stuff like that, and some you like and some you don't like. And I mean, I was brave enough, even when I was a lot younger. I used to do black shows in the heart of Brooklyn, and it didn't seem to bother me. I'm like, well, they can't have that much of a problem with me,
Nice. Obviously, not having your sense of sight is difficult to run a diner, but what do you think is the most important sense for running a diner for you?
Well, I don't know, it's just my mindset is still like, because, as a young person, what I started is like, let's say, just taking cash and then start waiting on tables, and that was the novelty. So for me, I just, of course now I have, as I'm older, a lot more headaches with the day-to-day things, and, every single thing, it's just like, I kind of, to an extent now, when someone says, hey, there's a big mess in the bathroom, I'm like, well, I can't see it, I'll probably be able to smell it, but, so those I can do on a day-to-day basis without, but I think in my head, I'm still this entertaining waiter that just, you come in for a good bite to eat and a few laughs.
What do you think is the best thing on the Bendix Diner menu? Or what is your off-the-menu food that you like to eat, if not on the menu?
Well, I would say that the things, it's so crazy, and you guys, when I say this, you're gonna say, wow. Like, it seems to be really, really into the whole breakfast, Keller ham, pancakes, omelets. You can get your eggs any way you want, poached this way, that way. And I am not a breakfast person. So, I'm more for the charbroiled burgers and the steaks and the, of course, my son Dimitri is studying at the Culinary Institute of America, so my palate is probably a little bit more for the things that, kind of like the unexpected. So here's poor Dimitri, he's having a hard day at work, and I'm like, yeah, can you make me chicken marsala? And I know he's basically saying, Dad, fuck you.
I mean, as a diner, you expect, obviously, like sandwiches and everything like that, but I remember being shocked because John was like, oh, you gotta have the pasta here. I'm from like an all-Italian family. I'm like, I'm not getting pasta.
It's better than mom's, Anthony.
Yeah, well, actually, it's not. I mean, don't go that far, but it's not.
We go that far. Don't pick on his mommy.
Greeks and Italians have a lot in common.
Where they both have mustaches that look like their mother.
So he was like, Tony made this meat sauce, it's fresh, and blah, blah. I was like, very reluctant. I was like, all right, fine, I'll try it. And I was shocked at how good it was. So, you know, it's not just a place for sandwiches and chicken fingers. They also serve like some really good food.
Okay, you're still on the payroll, Anthony.
I have always wondered about your parking lot, because your parking lot is always filled with the longest trucks I've ever seen. How do you get to the diner, and
They're
do you
so
ever have an issue with
fucking
parking?
long, I can see them. So what happened, believe it or not, is during COVID, when we were, you know, working 24 hours, and we've never solicited any of them, they'd come in and say, hey, like, I need a place to park my rig, and how much are you gonna charge me? So when, you know, they'd say, the government has shut you down and you still have to pay property taxes, and they don't want to hear any excuses, you're like, okay, this might get me by for a while. And then when things opened up in COVID, my genius idea is, well, let's charge every one of these bastards $150 more, and they'll leave, and ended up no one left. So, if you notice this, last, let's say 3-4 weekends, it's been a little easier to get in and out of, because one guy that had to actually did leave, you know. So, and now I'm just kind of like, when, you know, the conversation comes up with like, hey, should we try to find someone, you know, because it is almost like where people want that prime Route 17, hey, I can just go and start running off with my, you know, loads and so forth and so on. But I think if we want to try to make it still feel like a home diner, okay, maybe 2 or 3 of the trucks for a conversation is fine, but when you have like 9 of them in front of the diner on a weekend, it gets a little monotonous.
Awesome. To switch over to Anthony for a moment, was this the first short film project you've done, or were you in school when this started? Like, what was your past filmmaking experience, or did you just dive into filmmaking for this?
So I'd always been making films and watching films as a kid, and I went to Ramapo College for film, and so I had made shorts there, made short documentaries, a lot of scripted stuff. And then outside of college, this is the first film that I completed. There was a couple that I started and they didn't follow through, but yeah, so I in some ways consider this like my first film, because it was not a student film, it was a real like you know, documentary short. And I didn't know really how to maneuver that process. Everything I'd been doing up until that point was pretty much like CBS Sunday Morning style, you know, like vignettes on interesting people and places around Bergen County. But then John obviously was so interesting that I wanted to expand it. And I learned—
This is before he saw me naked.
Shortly, only shortly. And so I was thinking about that, keeping that concept in mind, and so I learned a lot about the filmmaking process while making this, and especially with documentary filmmaking. So like, you don't know your story. You know, you find an interesting story, but you're not really sure. It's not like a scripted thing where you know this is going to happen, this scene's going to happen, this scene. You kind of are on a journey with your subject, and so I just tried to ride that wave of inspiration, and that's why the film is 26 minutes instead of 7.
Thank you again, everybody, for taking the time to come out tonight. It really means a lot to me, because like I said, it's just, you know, still a Friday night. It's not the best weather conditions. I drove out here, by the way. I ran over my Sinai dog. He was in my blind spot.
The 1, 2, 3, I like it. And likewise, you know, when I started this, like, I really didn't, like I said, know what the film was gonna look like, but I also was sort of new to making things like this in general. And so a local screening like this is great, because it's played in theaters all over the country now for the last year, and people have been sending me emails and writing letters saying that they were inspired by John's story, they love the diner, they want to visit it. And again, when I first started, I was sort of struggling. I was living with my parents, I wasn't exactly sure. I knew what my story was. I just knew I wanted to make like a really good film. And so I spent a lot of time doing that, but had absolutely no expectations for it. You know, I was just going there alone at night with a camera, like that was it. And then when it sort of exploded into the festival circuit and did really well, I was rubbing shoulders with people who really knew what they were doing, like producers and films that had marketing departments and production companies and somebody else to make a poster, and it was like, you know, they were all kind of looking at me like, what are you doing here? But the thing that I did have, and I have to this day, was a really strong support system of friends and family who were able to drop by at a moment's notice and help me hold the camera or, you know, sit in the background of a shot. And so all the people here today who did that, like, thank you so much, because we were able to get to that next level of all together. Thank you for the Williams Center, to the Williams Center for putting this all together. To Daphne, to Michael and Charlie, and to you for having us, showing our film. And thanks to my friend John, who let me follow him around for a couple of years telling his incredible story. You know, I always wanted a place like a Cheers, where I walked in and it was sort of like home. I never had that. I never had a bar, anything that felt like that. But Bendix, which I never expected it to, feels like that. And at times it's it's better than others, but I'll take it. So thanks, everyone.
Just one story I want you to tell everybody, Anthony. The time when you set up your camera up in the roof of the Bendix Diner, the most amazing shot that you wanted to take. Tell everybody in the audience what happened.
So it was one night. I had an idea to get a time lapse from the roof of the Bendix Diner with the neons sort of all lit up and close, and with the traffic in the back. In my head, it was a fantastic shot. So but only in my head. I went up to the diner. I went up with a ladder. I got up. The roof is like a marshmallow. I was like, I don't know what the hell it was. It wasn't like a roof. It wasn't like you could actually stand. You could like sink into it. And I was like, oh shit. So like it's dark. It's nice. I finally get my camera like all set, all ready. My batteries die immediately. I had to call my mom, who drove to the Bendix Diner. Couldn't even find her way in. Drove to the Bendix Diner. Threw me the batteries, like throw them in the parking lot. She can't throw. It took a couple times. And I finally was like, oh, perfect. Got the whole shot set up, and I pressed record, and all of a sudden the thunderclouds just went boom. And it poured, not rain, it poured. I had to take my camera, like put it in my shirt. I took my shirt off. I was like putting my camera in my shirt. It was a sight. It's a good thing you can't see, man.
There are some advantages of being blind.
And so I'm like, I take the tripod, I take the camera, I go down the whole thing, I go in the kitchen, I'm like a wet rat. And Dimitri, John's middle son, is standing like directly in the doorway. And he was like, what happened? I'm like, the sky's opened up. Like, I'm soaked, I get it. And he just looked at me with this deadpan face. And he was like, you didn't know it was gonna rain? I knew it was gonna rain. You saw me go up there and like do the thing. Why did you tell me? I went home that day. I didn't get anything. I just put my camera away, and I was like, that's the end of today. That's it.
I mean, even that incident, and we still got the fucking documentary.
So I think the question on everyone's mind, it looks like you lost 2 of your best employees. Are you hiring right now?
No, we have a Mexican machine named Julio that just keeps working and keeps working.
Awesome. One last question for you, Anthony. You were making a documentary about a very prolific blind person. Did that take anything into account, like the actual technical aspects of the film, the fact that somebody who cannot see and it's a visual medium?
Yeah, there were times where like we were just having a conversation, and we were so into it that I would just like roll the camera, you know. And obviously, if a person can see, they know it's like right in front of their face. So that was an advantage, honestly, because they were real, genuine moments, and I just felt like a waste not capturing.
Ladies and gentlemen, he probably got naked in front of me.
There's a lot with the naked stuff. So that was one aspect that was helpful for me. But John, you know, he's blind obviously, but I never felt or I don't know. That's not the thing that comes to my mind when I think of him. You know what I mean? It's like I think of him primarily as a good father and a legitimately good father, not a helicopter parent, but someone who's really involved in his kid's life in a good way and wants to see them all succeed. Would have been a fantastic guidance counselor, his alternative career path, by the way, seriously. And
I'll keep it in mind when the Bendix family shuts down.
yeah, we saw the Chick-fil-A. And so I never saw a blind person. I always just like saw a really funny guy who ran a diner. And so no, it didn't factor in that sense. I was just lucky to have met him and tell the story. Yeah.
Awesome. And John, one final question for you. Somebody comes in tomorrow with $1 million check and they're trying to buy the Bendix diner. What are you going to do once you sell the diner?
Well, first of all, it's not my decision, so it'd be my mom. So if she says no, then you're going to find out that someone got strangled in the Bendix. Hey, it's all out there now. I'm done.
Retired police officer saying that?
I didn't say I was really bright. I let you do this documentary.
But do you have any plans outside of the diner of things that you want to do?
I just honestly feel like at this point in my life, the Bendix Diner is taking a little bit too much control of my life, where I honestly feel that I want a little bit more me time with me and my children. Even though they might not feel that way, who knows? But I think there's more things in life than just, you know, like putting in more hours at the Bendix Diner.
Nice. I think that's something we could all agree on. Although it is a very great diner, you have a beautiful relationship with your children. Thank you guys again for coming out to the Williams Center and presenting your documentary. Thank you, Anthony. Thank you, John. I appreciate you guys being willing to do this Q&A.
Thank you.
And I want to thank you guys. Thank you so much again for coming and experiencing this with me and Anthony again. And it means a lot to me.
Thank you. Yeah. Good, huh?